Hey, what's up, everyone? So, really quick, I felt like I want to talk about it more programmatically with all the editing, with all the research and sources, but, you know, I feel like a lot of things are happening geopolitically and politically internally in the States and otherwise. I thought I might as well just give a few comments, only because I have friends, close people that I love that have all their concerns, from different parts of the world about various things. But yeah, I was gonna say very simply. And by the way, I have Future Looks Bright hat. Somebody will say, "Oh, this is MAGA. You love Trump so much." Well, technically, it's not MAGA hat. But here's the thing: the problem, be it internal politics in the U.S. Or geopolitics, Ukraine, Israel. I mean, Armenia, Artsakh, and I mean, you name it. There are so many things there happening, right? I can't account to all of it, but I'm gonna give an advice to everyone to say that do not be overly radical or categorical in your assumptions and conclusions about certain events, right? One, analyze multiple sources. Two, understand from the lens, which lens you're looking at the situation. I give you a perfect example. So, a lot of criticism for Trump for his geopolitical decisions, especially in regards to Ukraine, right? And totally agree on that part in some regards, and I can attest to it in a second, but it doesn't mean that he's not doing great things internally for the United States, right? One can analyze everything as it is versus looking at it from a lens, oh, he's a bad guy on this, it means he's a bad guy everywhere. Because it's not really about bad guy or good guy, it's about the reality. The reality is that there is no perfect political figure or leader in the world. There is sinful and corrupt nature of human beings across the world. There are interests and alliances and fake friendships in geopolitical sense, in a global sense, and there are different people with different values. And so the reality is, from my perspective, as somebody who is, grew up in Ukraine but also lives here for more than 7.5 years. There is incredibly great changes internally, like, for example, the nonsensical things around the gender or the economical challenges that are mitigated right now, or government inefficiencies, or persecution for specifically persecution of Christians. I mean, there are so many things down to even immigration-wise, right? Like forcing COVID-19 vaccines on all immigrants that want to get a green card. I mean, you name it. There is like billion things that are getting better by the day, right? And then you have the geopolitics where, yeah, I may disagree with the fact that President Trump, for example, his rhetoric and again his style of expressing himself and otherwise that he typically uses to his advantage, but like, for example, blaming Ukraine for the war when America is the one who instigated that war to begin with, right? Which a lot of fellow Ukrainians didn't understand from the beginning. But manipulation from, European Union or America to get into the war instead of negotiating the first 3 months, 3 years ago, which we were trying to do. Because what? You then give ammunition, but who produces it? The money goes back to military-industrial complex. You have Lockheed Martin, Boeing, you have all these contractors and intermediaries, and there is no accounting. And my challenge is that then, well, you are the greatest nation on earth today, supposedly. Then, if you give this many billions of dollars in not doing accounting, probably it's your fault and not, the fault of the country you then assess not being good enough or being corrupt or being whatever. That's the internal issue of that country. But when you make a deal or give a loan or give money, you probably think twice who you give and how and etc., right? So there are, sides to blame here, but, there is a lot of nuances. Ukraine could have got into Russian territory way in the beginning of the war. But again, there was manipulation from the side of the West. Do not allow that. So it's tricky. It's like, yeah, do fight, but don't cross the border with Russia. Do not negotiate. Just take our ammunition. We'll help you and make it all about you in the media. But 3 years later, we'll tell you that you are all crazy. You stole our money. You are at fault for everything. Corrupt. Your president is a dictator. I mean, you're giving us problems. Just give up the land and move on and let's get over it because lives, we want to save lives. Well, that's not that easy. Speaking of Ukraine, then you go back to 1996, nuclear agreement between Russia and US, the fact that both was supposed to give security guarantees upon destruction of nuclear heads that were left from Soviet Union. I mean, there are so many other nuances, right, with these all these agreements. That I can go further about who actually rules America or who kind of rules the world, excuse me, what kind of nation and who's pulling the strings. Really, that's a layer deeper that I think I will reserve for next time because it's gonna take a while to communicate. But I mean, all I'm trying to say, the biggest advice I have for everyone when they assess politics is that, again, assess everything as it is, meaning like don't just play childish games of tribal, like there are things about Ukraine that I can speak to, whether from my life personally as a citizen or as somebody who can just analyze, that I completely disregard and criticize, or vice versa support. The same in the States, right? Or like this idea, why you live there, why you do this, or why you sided with this person. It doesn't work that way. Like America is great in so many ways, but then that same government here support, like says that they want to support, let's say, Israel, and they allude sometimes to Christianity somehow supposedly connected with Judaism, which is actually not true. That's a whole different again discussion. But then they allow 100,000 Armenians in Artsakh to be annihilated, displaced, raped, murdered, butchered, killed, knowing that that's the first Christian nation in the world, specifically in 301 adopting Christianity as a state religion, and the fact that, you know, uh, it's just lives of the people too, right? So they don't matter, right? So and then invest in money and ammunition into Azerbaijan, who is the one who is displacing Armenians, but why? Because it's backed by Turkey, who is part of NATO, and America is in NATO. So see, it's not easy. It's complicated. There are a lot of nuances. So when you watch TV, whether you like Fox or CNBC, or if you read Washington Post, or you read your Ukrainian magazine, or Armenian journal, your Australian whatever, or whatever the country or nation you are from, and you're analyzing global landscape of politics, the truth, and just first question everything. Two, multiple sources. Like when I say multiple, like a humongous number of them, and not just AI summaries. Three, it's like communicate with people who live in those places. Like you probably would get an insight from a person who lives in Ukraine under Russian missiles. Maybe they will tell you something. Now, again, being smart, some of them might be overly emotional and not give you the right answers to some questions, but there is a lot of insight. Or again, similarly, when you read different news media that's translated in your countries about US or about Trump, and it's all only left leaning, not giving you full scope of the truth, and sort of there is political agenda associated with it to criticize one side, then you also don't get the full information, right? Because again, internally in the US, there is a great pivot in my estimation, and we have to get back to like future being bright type of thing, or even present just improving. The bar is incredibly low for many years lately here. But again, what I'm saying is maybe you should ask somebody who lives here. So to my friends who live in Ukraine, you probably can talk to me. For me, I can probably talk to you. The same, with all of my friends or acquaintances across the world. I have a variety of, great people that I know and love and care about, whether, it's from India, from the US, from France, from Ukraine, from Armenia. I mean, you name it, right? And again, I just felt compelled to leave it here, like random post, thoughts out loud, not thinking about it a whole lot, just giving it from my soul. I'm in DC. I wanna have some, good time with my friends, and I want to go and make those photos with that Capitol building and the rest of the historical places. And I do anticipate somebody will say, "How dare you? How dare you? We have a problem. We don't like US, or we like US." I'm like, again, not everything is simple. If you want to go to the rabbit hole of the corruption and sin of human nature, the tragedies, the wars, the illnesses, the attacks, the whatever the sin you want to imagine, that all of us humans, from no matter what ethnicity, nationality, or country, um, we are engaged in, then you will just say that this whole planet is not worth living in. But that's where we get to faith, and that's where you realize, well, that is true. This world is broken, no matter where you go. So we, as somebody who grew up and was born in one place, grew up in another, lives in another, traveled a little bit. If you ask me where is the best place to live, I will say, well, what are your criteria for what it is the best place, and what are your hard limitations on perfection here? Because there is no perfect place. You choose, you try, you leave, you do your best. You want to build a family, get some resources. Like right now, it's finances, but it used to be some others. But yeah, and you just do the same cycle of the goals and aspirations, like any human on any part, in any part of the world, right? But you can't expect it to be perfect, and you can't expect your country or your nation or your government or even your neighbors to be as exactly clean like you want them to be. Now we have a guide, and that guide is God, and everything is quite clear on what we must do and adhere to. And I mean, it's really, really clear. But I'm saying you have to live within the parameters of what's happening and realistically assessing the situation, um, when you conclude things, right? When you communicate, when you react. And so we all have biases, we all have emotions, and they get the best of us sometimes. But um, yeah, just lean on God, and love the people that you do love, even if you have some challenges with not agreeing holistically on things. I mean, as long as you have 80% of common values, then it should be fine. Nobody has like 1999 even these days. There are too many differences. But also, again, just like COVID-19 thing, right? I had so many friends who were like obsessed with making sure everybody gets the vaccine and everything. And it's personal choice, personal health. But then, some of them ruined even relationships between each other, stopped talking to each other, all these debates. And guess what? Like 5 days later, you know the drill. I'm not gonna say I told you so, but there is a lot of holes and problems and issues and agenda that was associated with that whole era of psyoping the entire planet, right? Despite the fact that the illness was real, and despite the fact that it was had negative effects. But anyways, I'm not gonna get into it, but I hope you get the premise. The premise is, guys, nothing is simple. You can give credit where it's due. You can criticize where you think there is a necessity to criticize or vocalize things. But don't just say, oh, that guy is bad, or this country is fully trash, or they are so corrupt, or you are this, or you are that. Because if you look in the mirror, you suddenly will realize, well, maybe you are not that perfect either. I will leave you at that.